Yeah.
Mark, absolute pleasure. All the way from Australia, Brisbane. Wow. Formula One driver. It's the first for the show, so really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Mark.
No worries. Yeah.
Yeah,
Easy.
good. Mark, racing seems to be in your blood from such a young age. But what attracted you to the sport in the first place?
Well, definitely my father had a huge influence on me when I was a young lad. I think that I didn't realise how lucky I was growing up in a rural area. I thought that was relatively normal to have, small farms and as you guys have, very similar in South Africa, sort of sometimes, the area and space that we have to play in, and as a youngster learn how to take risks and balance the appetite of enthusiasm against crashing and having injuries and all the rest of it under my father's guidance. But I think that, I did play a lot of sports when I was young, and I think that I was finding myself watching a lot of motorsport on TV, whether it was 2 wheels or 4 wheels. I really enjoyed watching that, and I would often think about, they're sort of my real heroes, the guys that were doing that. So starting on motorbikes at a young age, not really racing, but, mucking around on motorbikes on the farm. And then very, very fortunately, and I think this is, crucial in all young sports, whatever your sport is, that if there's a local outlet for your passion, and the case for me, there was a small go-kart track not far from our area. So I had a chance to have that passion sort of bleed into an area which was convenient for me to have the go-kart track close by. So naturally, if there's not an outlet or an opportunity for someone to have the opportunity to at least try your passion to start with, then naturally it's really never really going to happen. So that was really fortunate that the track was close by, and yeah, it really went from there. I was between started on bikes when I was sort of 6 or 7, I suppose, and then go-karts from 12, 13, and that was it. The other sports really took a backseat role, and I started to get more and more serious. And when you realise, then you're getting more and more, competitive and confident, and you move your way up through the ranks.
Yeah, and you joy up the ranks you did, and you did so well, Mark. And we'll touch on that a bit later, exactly why. But when you actually made your Formula One debut, was it a sort of feeling of, oh my word, it's actually here, or was it, yeah, I agree, this is where I should be, this has come naturally to me?
Yeah, well, naturally, there's plenty of nerves. I mean, obviously, whether you're having your first test match for the Springboks, or for the cricket team, or anything that's so. It's a ginormous moment in your career. I was borderline professional before that, working with professional people, and there was very high standards. But when you officially get your first Formula One drive, and you're going to compete on the grid with only 22 guys, and you're going to race wheel to wheel, and it's very much, of course, a very individual sport at that point when you're on the track, even though we have a huge team around us. But so yeah, it was in my home country. It was a complete fluke. That's where the calendar worked. But Australian Grand Prix for my first race, huge amount of interest and focus on me. I was not in the best team by a long shot, but it was still all relative to me in terms of my expectations and performance on what I wanted to do. It was a great opportunity to show that I was ready for the task, and that turned out to be the case. It went pretty well, but naturally, a lot of healthy nerves for the occasion, treating it, of course, extremely seriously, and wanting to do well, and I suppose being composed under pressure as well, as best as I could, and just take the moment in as best I can. Sort of day by day. It's a 3-day weekend for us. There's a lot of big things, a lot of firsts. That's the thing. You can get a lot of advice, but naturally you've got to go through these scenarios yourself and how you handle it.
Absolutely, sure. But then, Mark, just how fit, and I don't know if we understand exactly how fit you have to be, and how do you get fit? I mean, because there's so much to it, and you are under pressure in more ways than one. How fit, or how do you get to be so fit?
Yeah, it's a really misunderstood sport, I think, on the human conditioning side. Unfortunately, I was quite tall for my job, so for myself, being at 183 centimeters was not exactly the right height to be inside a car.
Oh, interesting.
So ergonomically, it was quite challenging for me to fit in those cars. They want the cars very small in the cockpit area, the pedal box, the area where we put our ass, that's got to be quite tight in terms of making sure we have enough room in that area with seat belts and seat, and fire extinguishers and boxes and sort of control boxes and electronic boxes. It's very, very tightly packaged in there, a little bit like a fighter jet. So yes, for me, and for all drivers, you got to be very lean. So, you don't want to carry any extra weight that you don't need, because it's like a jockey, right? I mean, people might think you've got a huge amount of horsepower in the car, which we do, but our performance is measured on such small incremental values in terms of the stopwatch that we, a half a kilo, if you're over by half a kilo, obviously that is detrimental to your performance. So weight control is very, very important. And with that comes an incredible amount of travel. It's not that we're doing, 4 races a year or 3 races a year, and you can pick and choose the tournaments you want to do if you're feeling good, if you're feeling bad. We have no choice, mate. We are doing 18 races around the world. If you feel rough, if you feel good, if you get run down, if your immune system's compromised because of the amount of jet lag you've got, that's what we sign up for. We're not complaining at all. That's part of the profession. You've got to be lean, fit and strong. The G-forces are very high. Yeah. Your lower back, your shoulders, your neck. The cars do really take it out of you, and you're in there for 2 hours sometimes, and the heat is very high. If you think about Singapore and Malaysia, I know you guys get some hot days in South Africa as well, so you think about some of the hottest days, and generally we raced back then at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it was always pretty toasty. So yeah, I think that we can lose up to 2 kilos in a Grand Prix in terms of weight. So people think that we have, I suppose and look, I'm a huge sports fan, as I said, whether it's boxing, whether it's, I'm happy to put my hand up and say, which sports you got to be the fittest for. And there's some dark horses out there, like even motocross, like supercross guys on their motorbikes, like they will be up I think they'd be in the top 3 in the world in terms of the fittest guys, in terms of all-round fitness. They are extraordinary on their endurance levels and the all-round agility and movement. And so it's motorsport is sometimes misunderstood in terms of the levels of fitness required.
And Mark, I would assume that's why you almost have a weekend's break. So you'll have a weekend's break, have a race again just to recover, and obviously do a whole lot of setting up, things like it. Because it would take an immense strain on the body, and if you're losing 2 kgs for a race, you need to recover somehow. Sure.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, mate. Yeah, we do have, some gaps. Normally it is like a 2 weeks in between the events, but sometimes we have like a triple header. We have 3 races on the bounce. And back in, when I first started competing, we would test during the week. So we would drive the cars during the week as well. So, often sometimes you could do 45 days of driving the car in the season on top of the 18 events, and then you got your travel and whatnot. So at its peak you're looking at back in the day you could easily do sort of 180 nights in hotels a year, and it's but that's what it is. We have a tremendous team around us. When I finished in F1, up to 800 people in a team or 900 people in one team working to make the car as quick as possible. Huge budgets and a lot of the standards, and Formula One is cutting edge. It is, every department is pushing the boundaries on performance, and that's pushed to the driver clearly as well. Absolutely.
But talking about sort of pushing boundaries, how critical is your timing around corners? Given that, on straights you can unleash all your power and go absolutely flat out. Timing is everything, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, technique it's like any sport again. If you're driving well, if it's coming at you a bit easier, if you're whether you're a golfer or a tennis player or whatever your sport is, then that naturally if you're driving really, really well and generally if it's coming at you pretty slow, so if you're seeing it early and that your anticipation is very, very high, then you're going to be driving pretty well. For us, obviously, unlike a lot of other sports, yes, rugby union, yes, a little bit cricket, but in terms of, we have to manage a lot of risk as well. We have, there is consequences for our decisions. If we make an error of judgment, we can, have large impacts and big hits. So we've got to factor that in as well. But in terms of our cornering techniques and whether it's a low speed corner or a high speed corner, our vision is absolutely crucial. Our anticipation on how far we're looking through the corner. Some corners are taking it, over 300 kilometers an hour, 320k an hour, some of the fastest corners in the world. So they're pretty quick. And that comes with that comes with training. Of course, we come through the junior categories, and you get exposure to those high levels of G forces and speed. So, keep in mind also, when you watch a Formula One race, if you sit on the floor of your lounge room, and that's where our eye line is. Our eye line is incredibly low, so the sensation of speed is high. So the onboard camera that you see is a lot higher than what our eye line is. So, and we can't see much. The helmet is pretty. It's a pretty sort of claustrophobic environment in terms of the aperture that you look out of your helmet is quite compromising, to say the least. So all of those things make the environment pretty hostile. But we get used to it. But it's certainly not for everyone in terms of driving at those speeds, and we get pretty good at the consistency. Like all sports, mate, if you've got to be consistent, you've got to be we're measured on, as I said, very, very fine margins, and if you can be as consistent as possible, lap after lap, or day after day, or year after year, then that's important for the teams.
Oh, excellent. Well, that's a bit scary, sitting on the floor, and that's your view that you have. That's scary.
Yes. Yeah.
But well, I reckon one of your strengths was how you took corners. You were probably one of the better corner takers in Formula One racing. Would you agree? Do you feel that was one of your strengths?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed high-speed corners. Naturally, all the guys in F1 are at a very, very high level. They are the best. So they're all, when you're dealing with the last, 4 or 5 guys on the grid at the front, week in, week out, naturally they're extremely strong and they don't have many weaknesses. So, to get an advantage is not easy. But sometimes it works out that you do enough that it's enough on the day to win, and you can beat everyone. But it's in my case, I did a bit of that, but not as much as some others, and maybe quite a bit more than some others. So it's always a fine line. But the greats, the absolute greats, all the world champions, the multiple world champions, triple, or there's a few of those triple world champions, and Alan Prost on 4, and Fangio and Michael and Lewis now on the big numbers. But those guys naturally don't have many weaknesses at all. But I find that if low speed corners were not my signature punch. I suppose that was always a corner that I had to work really, really hard on the technical low speed stuff, but the high speed corners would come naturally to me. And when I was at my peak, that was a part of my job that I enjoyed the most.
Excellent. Absolutely brilliant. But Mark, you did well did you have a favorite track at all?
Silverstone I enjoyed. I won there twice, so that was always good memories, and Monaco as well. I think the tracks that you win at, you have the races in the pocket, and they're tremendous memories. To win those 2 events, and they're big races. They've been on the calendar for a long time, so they have a lot of historical significance, which is really nice. And the atmosphere of both those events are generally awesome as well. The Monaco Grand Prix is very special. It's nearly worth a couple of Grand Prix in terms of its sort of how prestigious it is. So that was always a nice one to do well at. Silverstone I enjoyed. Suzuka, I love that track. I never won there, finished second, but it was a fantastic circuit to drive at. Brazil I enjoyed. It was Interlagos, a short lap, but a lot of character. Always something going on there. It always provided good racing, and it was a very, very good circuit. Still is. So I managed to fluke a couple of wins there. So that was nice. So it was there is some, but my job is to enjoy them all, mate. I can't have a favourite track. You can't say, well, I can only drive at these ones. Your job is to, again, like other sports, whether it's tennis or golf, or I don't like this surface, or I don't like this wicket, and then I perform better at these other places. It's your job to try and perform at every level you can, and every circumstance you can, because obviously the greats can, and you always find someone that will give you a good kick in if you don't perform at a track that you convince yourself you don't like.
That is very, very true. But then am I allowed to ask you which is the toughest track you've ever experienced?
Yeah, I think Bahrain I never really enjoyed. I always enjoyed driving an F1 car, don't get me wrong. I always enjoyed my job, but in terms of enjoying, like Bahrain for myself, I just couldn't. I didn't know. It was a tough nut to crack for me in terms of what to focus on technically with the car, and I think there was a lot of patience required there. So you need to be, the more you sort of attack there, you don't get much reward back from it. So it's you got to be extremely patient and sort of very progressive with everything there. So that was not really my style. And I suppose also even things like getting into the surface, the track is very, very abrasive. So yeah, that's what I just said. You know, if I was to say we're going to have 20 races at one track, I wouldn't pick that one.
With Red Bull,
because I'd pick some others, but it was my job. I still went to Bahrain and tried to do my best. And often it wasn't enough, but I still tried hard to work it out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, Mark, but you're really a tough guy, and I'm going to give a few examples later as to why I said what I said. But let's quickly chat about technology, and is that affecting the sport in quite a major way now? For example, do Mercedes have a bigger advantage than anyone else at the moment?
Well, yeah, the sport naturally has always been 80-20, 80% the car and 20% the driver. But, you know, the best drivers are always in the best cars. And right. The best drivers always make the best cars better because technically they are more superior. They know how to give more feedback. They have more mind management around explaining to the engineers what they need. If you give that to a whole stack of average drivers to a phenomenal car over time, he will make that phenomenal car an average car, in my opinion, where the good guys continue to make that car better. So there's a lot of strings in your bow that you need to be a world-class driver and stay at the front. And it's no coincidence that the best guys are always at the front of the grid in the best cars. So that's always been the case, and they're magnets together. And often, there's lots of guys that can't really deal too much with the front. Sometimes they get a phenomenal car and it's really hard for them to have victories or even podiums, or they just can't deal with racing at the front on the first two rows or the first row every weekend, trying to aim for that because it's a different level of pressure. So some guys can operate quite well in the middle of the field, which is still a high level, but they can't really, adapt to that sort of like nearly the Formula One Plus, if you like, and the first two rows every single weekend is still another level again. So, it is a highly technical sport. We always know that, but generally the best guys are at the front often, and if you're weak or not performing or not, frankly, just not good enough to be in a top car, you might last a season, but you're not going to last that long because they'll find someone else who can do a better job.
Yeah, that's tough. We'll find someone else to do a better job.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But Mark, I mean, just reading up on you, you really are a tough guy. I think you raced and you had a broken left rib. And then in Japan, you had, I think it was food poisoning, and you actually finished the race, and I think you actually threw up while racing.
Yeah.
And then you had the COVID-19 flip. But here you are, you're going strong. I mean, that must be one of the scariest moments for you. I think of the COVID-19 flip, when I think you touched the tail and you went over. What sort of goes through your mind, and how do you feel? I mean, that must be jolly scary.
Yeah. Yeah, look, naturally, like I said before, the sport comes with its risks, and if there's an error of judgment, sometimes the penalty is small, sometimes it's big. I did flip a car in Valencia. As I say, it was quite doing gymnastics with an F1 car at high speed is never a good thing. Doing backflips high speed is, very, very frightening. And you're not sure how it's going to go. You are concerned. And thankfully the safety is very, very high. And I was very, very lucky. Like that, you really are in the lap of the gods of how that is going to end up, because you get an impact the wrong way. We have had some fatalities in our sport in the last few years, which is really tough, and we learn from those as best we can, and try to whether it's medically, whether it's from a track operational perspective, whether it's car design. Formula One is one of the best sports in the world, if not the best sport in the world, in terms of reacting to lessons as fast as possible. So we continue to do that. But look, as a driver, I think that I certainly tried to pride myself on turning up to work. I had a big responsibility, week in, week out with the people that were committed to me. And if I was feeling a bit rough, or of course if I was carrying some niggles, I wanted to sort of hide those niggles and do the best I could, and B, that's the level of commitment I would I would like out of them as well. So for me to pull out of races or some test sessions or certain things which might have been, certainly the easy option at the time. But when I was competing, I saw that I have a big responsibility to myself, to the people that invested up, whether it's, invested their time and effort, engineering and teamwork and all the rest of it that goes into it, to have a reflection of, you've got to have high standards and do, give 100% at that time. We can deal with Monday when it comes. Let's not stress about Monday. If I've got, if I'm going to complicate, sometimes the injuries a bit more or whatever it is, we'll deal with that at the time. But I've got to give 100% today. And I didn't have the most skill in the world at all. But I believe that, I tried to, have the willpower to, when I was competing, to do what the control of controllables and give everything I had at the time to give the best reflection of myself as possible.
Excellent, Mark. That's such a good summary of your professional approach towards your career. Well, excellent, Mark. But
Thanks.
Porsche is also a car that you've taken quite a bit of interest in. Could you tell us a bit more about the World Endurance Championship? What is that all about?
Yeah, the World Endurance Championship. I mean, sports cars has been around for a long time. It's very different to Formula One. You have multiple, drivers sharing one car, because sometimes the races are, 6 hours long, 12 hours long, 24 hours long. So naturally, you can't do some of those races on your own, if not any. So when I was coming to the end of my career in Formula One, Porsche approached me to say, would I like to go and race in the sports car program and the WEC, which is the World Endurance Championship. And naturally, any driver that gets a phone call off Porsche I was very happy to receive that and really go in. And it was a big voyage of sort of a discovery for me in terms of going into it was a new team, obviously clearly well funded and well organised, as you'd expect from Porsche, but we still had to go through a lot of lessons. And it doesn't matter who you are in terms of how much coin you've got, and setting up a new team of lots of individuals. I think we had about 27 or 30 different nationalities within the team. So getting that glued together culturally and get the winning mentality and the belief into the team takes time. And we, the team was, very, very, running very smoothly, very quickly. We had good leaders in the team, and we managed to have a highly successful program. And I really enjoyed that. I had great teammates. We're a bit of a brotherhood to this day, which we enjoy each other's company. And we got really thrust together very, very, in a weird situation in my eyes anyway, because I wasn't used to that from Formula One. But the sports car guys, it's a very different chemistry. It's really, the races are long, they're tough. A lot of things can happen. You're never out of the race until it's over because they're so long. And with long races, you get a lot of sleep deprivation. The mechanics get tired, drivers get tired, so the emotions run a bit thin. People, they really, you see people, their true colours when they're really, really, really tired. When a bit like you now, mate, when you had to get up at 5 o'clock for this interview. So when you're tired, you can, as I say, some people react differently, and some people aren't as good with the old deprivation of not getting much beauty sleep. So that's interesting to see how that rolls out, and you see people's characters really come out. So we see that the emotions run high. So that's why the sport's good, because it does demand certain different qualities out of people. I really enjoyed my time with Porsche. I'm still with them to this day as an ambassador for the brand. They're an extraordinary company, in essence, with great sporting, a great ethos for the sporting spirit and sports cars, and they're always doing some really sexy and cool things, and I enjoy working with them.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant, Mark. But then you were also involved in Superstar Racing Experience, and that's slightly different from Porsche, isn't it? It's a similar category.
I was going to be racing this year in the US, but it's looking more and more challenging to get across there. So that's still a bit fluid at the moment. But I'm pretty much retired, mate. That would have been just for some fun. But I am, pretty much done now, mate. I'm 8 kilos up from when I was competing, and my eyes aren't once what they were. They're pretty good. My eyes are still pretty good, but certainly a young man's game, mate. I think you're kidding yourself. Some people can't let go of their previous life, and they think they can still do things that they can't. For me, I feel that I've been pretty good at accepting that definitely my day is done, and I don't want. It's good also for the young guys. I mean, come on, you got to know when your time's up. I had a good run, it's for the youngsters to come through, which was me those years ago, and now I like looking at them coming through and having a red hot go too. So youth is important in every sport. You need youth, you need flamboyancy, you need them to take risks, and sometimes with the old experienced hands, they can be a bit boring and predictable. So it's good to get out of it when you're done.
Yeah, no, you're right. Always retire at your highest, I believe. So no, I agree with you, Mark. Very, very good. But with that, there's always comes some form of reward, and just you come across as dedicated, hardworking, tough guy, really, really tough, mentally fit. Because you were inducted into the Australian Motorsport Hall of Fame. That must have been a sort of nice sort of effect and feel like, yeah, there we go. It is a good achievement. And I think you're a worthy candidate of that.
Yeah, no, thanks, mate. I think, I just worked with good people, mate. I got over to Europe. I was very fortunate to bump into good people. I managed to get some right results on the right day that just kept me in the game over there. And I think that's important to know. You just got to keep swinging, and it'll if you want it enough. I didn't really have a plan B, to be honest. I just had a plan A. It's like a one-way tightrope in a way. If you give yourself too many options, you'll find you will do 7 out of 10 for all of them. But if you just do laser focused and have that focus on one prize and be very narrow on that on your vision and what you want to do. And I think that that worked out okay for me, and I had the support of good people to do that. So then at the end of your career, you naturally have a bit of a reflection, even though I don't look back too much. But, I did enjoy flying the flag for Australia, no question about it. It's pretty hard for us, like it is for South Africans in motorsport, to, do international competing at that level, competition at that level, I should say, and same for the Kiwis. And it's not easy, and that's why it was a long time between drinks. I think it was like 21 years between victories for Australians at that level. So it's I think there's only 4 guys that have won at that level. So you guys have got Jody Scheckter and you've had some legends, but it's still pretty slim pickings compared to the Europeans and some of the South Americans. So that's the way it is. But it's nice then when the country, of course, gives you a bit of a pat on the back at the end of it all. But it's more for other kids to see, what's possible. That's what's crucial, is that they, just dream big, just go really big, and just have one plan and just go hard.
Again, profound wisdom there. Absolutely brilliant, Mark. I really enjoy that. That's good. That's really, really good. Yeah. But the season's just around the corner. How do you see this one panning out? Is it going to be quite interesting? Because there's other things at play that are almost out of our control to a certain degree. You're looking for quite an intense season coming up?
Yeah, well, naturally, with the Hamilton effect with his team, and we just saw Tom Brady do his thing in the Super Bowl. But I think the Hamilton effect is reasonably similar. That Hamilton Lewis, just all the good people don't want to leave that team. They've got the best people at Mercedes-Benz now, and that's a credit to them. They've got good retention of staff. Headhunting hasn't been easy to get people out of that and disrupt that program. So the other teams are really, it's up to them to find a way to beat Lewis consistently. And unfortunately for them, he's still motivated and hungry. And that's the most easiest and convenient thing that they are hoping that happens, is that Lewis loses his motivation. But his trophy cabinet in his mind and his bank account is still empty. And that's a problem for the opposition. So he is not resting on any laurels, and he's not looking back. And he's a serial winner. He still enjoys driving on the limits and finding new ways to improve himself, which is a credit to him. So I see Max Verstappen as the biggest threat. Verstappen has to be the obvious threat with Red Bull to see if they can take it to him. Max is extremely strong in all conditions, but they need a bit more power from that engine, and they need a bit more downforce from the car, and they need a bit more. Sort of the sensitivities around that car are still a little bit more than what you have with Lewis's car and his team. They just got that. They've got a golf club for every shot, and sometimes Max doesn't have that yet with his team. And of course, I'm a huge Red Bull fan. I'm still I'm still with them, but I have to give credit where it's due, and obviously Lewis is going to be hard to beat. But we shouldn't say it's boring. Yes, he's been dominating for a long time, but he has had a lot of championships that have not been handed to him. Last year he won it pretty early, yes.
Yes, yes.
COVID hasn't been easy, as you said. This year we're going to have some, these guys are going to be flexible with the calendar and the health and how they're moving around. But the car doesn't drive around itself. Lewis has multiple opportunities to crash and make mistakes and do things which he can invent some issues, don't worry. But let's see how he goes. I'm interested to see how the cars roll out this year, and maybe they don't have the car this year. Maybe they're going to get caught out. But it's going to be he'll be in the fight. We know that. There's no question about it. He'll be there fighting for victories.
Absolutely. And then quickly on your fellow countryman, Daniel Ricciardo, how do you think he's faring? He's up there. He's working hard to get up to pole position, I believe. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think his share price is, I'm not a big gambling man, but I think I'd be grabbing a few shares on him in terms of the next 24 months. I think that McLaren are really a team in the ascendancy. They've got the Mercedes engine now, which is more powerful than the Renault from last year. So they're looking forward to that partnership. Daniel is clearly world class. I think that he's going to get a lot of podiums. He could jag a few victories next year. The sport needs him at the front because he's good for the sport. And I just hope that, McLaren can give him the car that he deserves. And we all want him at the front because he's good to watch and he's exciting. And particularly on Sundays, over one lap, he's getting, obviously he's you could say maybe he's not at Lewis and Max's level on Saturday, but on Sunday, wow, he's pretty special. So let's see. Yeah, and then you got the return of Alonso too, which will be fascinating to see how he goes. The old boys coming back, and let's see if it's too many boxing rounds, but we'll just see how that goes. It's going to be fascinating.
Absolutely. Just get your opinion on one thing. I know it might be a bit tricky, but Lewis Hamilton and Michael Schumacher, greatest ever. What do you think? Or is
I'd go with Lewis. With Lewis. I just think that it's been done in a cleaner fashion. I think if you're gonna, to compare those two is so difficult anyway because they're both, like you say, 14 world championships between them.
Yeah.
What do you got? 160 victories? Ridiculous. Those two have been the men for the last 30 years. And, it's extraordinary. I think Michael, certainly drove Lewis to higher levels. He saw he had a bit of exposure to him. There was a bit of a crossover in 10, 11, 12, I think, when Michael come back a bit. But Michael wasn't at his best anymore there. That was obvious. His best was in the first career.
Yeah.
The comeback didn't really work. But I think that Lewis just didn't really demand who his teammates were. So he's not really doesn't care who's in the other car. Michael was big on that. And I think that just in terms of the level of how clean it is and ethically how the boundaries. Yes, Lewis has stepped over the mark a few times, but Michael would find that unfortunately that little bit more, which we all know that he didn't need to do lots of those things because he was just so good, but he just sometimes, I think Ross Brawn once said it was almost like a bit of a reboot mentally. He would do something that he had a bit of a Control-Alt-Delete on, which was sometimes, just frustrating that he had to resort to some of the tactics that he did. But so for me, that's just one column which Lewis just might edge ahead on in terms of, having Michael covered.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. But Mark, sorry, man, we're almost done there. I just wanted to ask you one or two more things. You spoke about teammates there, and there was quite a bit of a spat between Sebastian Vettel and Leclerc. How do you handle a situation like that? You're in the same team, but in the same breath, you've got to drive for yourself. You've got to make sure you get over that. How do you sort of handle it and not want to throttle each other?
Not easy, mate. It's not easy. Yeah, you have a lot of friction. You need good, strong management within the team. The rules of engagement have got to be clear. A lot of transparency around machinery within the team and how the strategies work and how starts work. There's lots of ways where you can have subpar machinery that can make things trickier for you if there's any agendas. So it's a bit challenging. The sport is it can happen where there's friction between two teammates, and it's just that sort of arm wrestle, and you've got to try and mark your corner as best you can. I tried just myself personally through 2009 through 2010. I was had some tremendous battles with Sebastian, and then it sort of I couldn't live with him from after those years in terms of just technically I wasn't diverse enough in terms of understanding the Pirelli tyres, and I think once he won the World Championship, then he was on his way in terms of equipment as well. But it's not easy because you want to obviously have your team on. They get very territorial because there is nearly a curtain between the team because they want to protect you as well. So it gets challenging. You need strong people inside the team, and it'll happen again. There's teammates that don't get on. There's fireworks. It's happened throughout the sport for decades. From the 60s and 70s all the way through. There's been friction, and it'll continue because you get two guys that are close to each other and they want to fight. Then there's tension.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. And Mark, as we sort of draw towards an end, are you still commentating on Formula One? Are you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do work for Channel 4 in the UK, which I really enjoy with David Coulthard.
Oh my word! Now you're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. So, have you met DC?
No, not yet. No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So, and Eddie Jordan, actually, I know he does a bit of work with us too. I know he spends a bit of time down there in Cape Town. So we've had a good team. It's fun. We try to bring the people closer to the sport. That's important. Give them some education, but not in a patronising or condescending sort of way. We want to make them enjoy the sport and fill them in, and as let's call it experts, try to bring them closer to the sport and work out what the driver or mechanics or key individuals in the team are going through when they're trying to watch on the TV.
Excellent. Brilliant. Well, Mark, you've been an absolute delight to chat to. Thank you so much for your time. Like I said,
thank you.
It's so good to talk about Formula One, a sport that is loved here, but I wish we could get more of it because I find it mind-blowing how you guys do what you do. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. It takes a proper effort.
No worries, Ryan.
Yeah.
No worries, matey. Well, I hope you have a good day, mate. And let's get a Grand Prix to South Africa at some point, back down there to Kyalami or somewhere. It's it'll be awesome. I know the love's down there, so all the best, and g'day to all the Formula One fans down in South Africa.
Thank you.
Bye, mate.
Bye, Mark. All the best, man.
See you later. Ciao. Bye-bye.
Cheers, bye.